Right, this is Andy B, the Get Your Home Show. Hello, welcome. That was the news at 5 in this hour. We have more tunes yet to come from Joss Stone, LZ7, and Lonnie Morissette. That's all before 6 o'clock. But before all of that, I get to meet and greet and say hello, or introduce. I'll speak properly in a minute. Introduce you to my Thursday regular guest, Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello. Great to be here.
Yes, despite my convoluted, messy, clunky introduction.
And you're such a pro, Sarah, normally, but I just thought it just flowed anyway. It's great.
I just keep going. I was thinking this morning, years ago, Joe said, you should be a DJ. I never, ever remember this conversation. Happened lots of times. So you'd be really good. You can talk and you can fill a silence and yeah, I can do that. And I'd never thought about it. But yeah, I just ramble on.
This couldn't get any similar to being a DJ, though, could it? Really?
Not really. It's just one of those. I like to talk. I like to make people feel good. I like to chat. If someone says hi, they get a 14,000-word dissertation back because I like to have chatter.
Yeah, you're so good. It's a beautiful thing to be able to come on and just feel at ease and think, right, okay, what are we going to chat about today? And what can we bring? What can we bring to people? To cheer their day or to help them or to whatever way the conversation goes.
Lifting people up, that's what we try and do. You just made me think of what I want to talk about now, because I was talking about chattering, and some people are very comfortable with, hi, how you doing, my name's Andy, and they'll just talk at you, and you walk away thinking, could you talk less? I don't know who you are. That's too much detail. And some people are just very, very free at sharing personal details about their life, about their medical conditions, even though you've never met them before. And I'm all for honesty, but sometimes it gets a bit much. And then there is another group of people who, how you doing? Yeah, I'm fine. They just don't want to engage and talk. So from a sensory healthy perspective, what might be going on with those two very different dynamics? People who will just chalk at you. I mean, maybe that's good or bad. I'm not going into that. And then the people who just don't want to engage. What could be happening in terms of sensory health there?
Yeah, I think I'd speak more into the ones that are more avoidant first, because I think the other one has much more of a social nuance and understanding the social skills and so on. But there could be a sensory element to it. But the ones that are more avoidant are typically more obviously they're the people that I want to check out their touch system, ironically, because if they don't engage, if their eyes don't connect, if their voice doesn't connect with you, then you are much less likely to actually touch them. So it's almost like an inbuilt defense mechanism to not engage in the same way, to not talk, because actually if that is going to cause someone to connect physically, because as humans we are very connective physically, but if they're over responsive, their tactile system, anytime somebody touches them, it feels like it's sunburn, or they're really set off into that fight or flight mode very, very quickly. So it's not a great place to be. So certainly averting the eyes and not talking, they're classic symptoms that there may be other things going on in the senses. But certainly also, I mean, those who are visually overreactive, they can't actually make eye contact because that does hurt, for want of a better word. It's the word that they would use to describe looking at someone. So it's much easier, much safer. Eyes are down. And then if there's auditory issues that they're just trying to hold themselves together, again, because of that fight or flight or unpleasantness that's going on in the auditory system, if they don't talk, if they don't have conversation, they're not going to get stuff back into their ears. They're just coping with what's going on at the moment, and that's as much as they can actually cope with. So yeah, by cutting down, by shutting themselves down, by moving away, by not engaging in the same way, it makes life more manageable and safer for people.
I guess there's always that I'm going to call it a risk very carefully. There's always that risk of, someone isn't engaging in the people. You can observe them. Oh, well, there must be domestic violence. They're not looking at people, therefore it's domestic violence. Or maybe they're really super anxious or depressed because they can't engage. And it's very easy to make really naive judgments upon people based on what what we see in a snapshot. Many times you've said, well, you're not looking at a thing, you're looking at a number of things. Are there clusters of things going on? Not is there one thing. If someone drops a pen, well, they've dropped a pen on its own. It's not indicative of anything other than they dropped a pen. I dropped the soap this morning. It's slippy. Okay. I mean, how many of us drop the soap? It's not indicative. But if we can never, ever hold a bar of soap and it always drops all of the time and we can't wash ourselves, now we've got a problem. If that pen can't be in our hand because it's excruciatingly painful, it could be physical, it could be sensory. And it's the same, I guess, with that person that we see whose head's down and they're speaking very quietly and they don't want to engage. If we're not careful, we start with judging the reasons why they are struggling to connect. I know someone, for example, who would never look you in the face. The reason was their neck wouldn't go straight. It's that simple. When they weren't looking at you and talking down, they physically couldn't do. It wasn't sensory health at all. It was physical. Their neck was sort of fused in this downward position. So it is important that we don't make those snapshots of what it is that we see and therefore conclude that because of this, it means this when maybe it doesn't.
Yeah. And I haven't spoken about this for some time, but when people do come and see me, I always want to check out the other things first. I mean, I know often I'm speaking about, well, check out the sensory first, but there are some more obvious things going on, even before we get to the sensory, the skeleton being one of them. So as you say, if something is aligned differently, it is going to affect function. So for your person who couldn't, hold their head up, that we don't even need to go into all the sensory bits and pieces for that point, because we've got a skeletal issue or there's something else that's happened that is a physical reason for that. So, I mean, I do have what's called, is it sensory, is it behavior, is it a heart issue, at the end of the sensory super system, where I guide people through the whole assessment, treatment, management side of things. But that's very much at the end, once people have really got a good handle of sensory. But that behavior element is huge too. So once you've kind of like sorted that it's not something physical, and are they eating and are they sleeping, those basic bits and pieces, we then look at what are they trying to communicate with their behavior, because that tells us so much, as well as just the sensory overreactivity or underreactivity, or just not supported well enough in their sensory integration. So yeah, there is lots to to be looking at, but it's how, if we can love people and accept people without putting any pressure on them to be anything different, and then see how we can come alongside someone to bring them to a different place if that works for them. And some people are more than happy in their presentation, more than happy in the way that they are, but that takes a while to build up that understanding, and then that acknowledgement that they know that you really care for them, so that you can then ask the question as to whether they want to change, whether they would like to do things differently, or actually whether they're perfectly happy to stay doing what they're doing. That's a sensitive conversation, but that's one that has to happen a bit further down the line, not on that first meeting that we're mainly talking about at the moment.
You said there are these different parts you look at in the sensory system that you use. You mentioned the heart. Is that emotional or is that physical when you're assessing the heart?
Yeah, I use the term the heart for character and for sin issues, basically. But because I deal both in the Christian world and the secular world, and anybody I want to feel comfortable coming in, it's like recognizing that sometimes we are just dealing with, behaviors that come from our heart, that come from that place of being jealous or being greedy, or, all of those things that are much more self-centered. And they are heart issues, they are character issues. But yeah, I have had to explain that a few times, and I wasn't sure whether to change the wording or not, but everybody really likes it when they understand it. And I thought, well, I'm not selling that one, as it were. I'm introducing people to a way of thinking. So I don't need it to be marketed in a way that speaks really loudly of what it's all about.
This, I don't remember the details, so I'm not going to be able to quote this properly at all. So don't come back at me if you think that's not what happened. Okay, it's as best as I can remember. But there were two consultants, one who was like a consultant psychiatrist in a hospital looking at a room of people. And there was another a consultant who deals with walking, whatever that bit of consulting medical thing is. Okay, told you I don't remember this well. And they were looking at this room of patients, and they were saying, well, if I look at this room, anybody who stands up and walks to the doctors when they say, come through to the room, I can tell you who is fit and who is not fit just by the way they stand up and walk across the room. Are they people who exercise regularly or not? And the psychiatrist said, well, if they've got a broken leg, how can you possibly tell? Well, it's nothing to do with that. It's about so many other factors of how they hold themselves as they go across the room. A broken leg, or I don't know, missing an arm or something. Well, yeah, it's going to change things, but it's not going to change the overall thing. And then the psychiatrist was basically saying, well, I can tell the people who haven't forgiven people, because almost all of my patients, they haven't forgiven someone. And a lot of the sort of physical manifestations that we go to a psychiatrist or whatever for, a lot of that is from bitterness. It's from a lack of forgiveness. He said the problem is because they're not forgiving people, that has a physical consequence, because they're holding all this stuff in. And these, I mean, I'm completely mashing the conversation on the head, okay? But I think the point is valid, that actually, if we don't forgive, it's going to affect how we view the world. Eventually, that's going to manifest itself one way. I mean, this was in a hospital somewhere, I don't remember where, but there's just these two senior consultants looking at patients and saying, we can tell just from looking. I mean, what was amazing was the fact the psychiatrist said, well, 90% of these are bitter. It's like, how could you possibly know? They just are, because that was his experience. It's a massively high number, because people, we don't want to forgive. Why would we want to forgive someone? What's that got to do with sensory health and physical health? Everything. And it's so massive to who we are as humans, and our bodies hold stuff. I mean, they absolutely do. And it's clear. I love observing. I love watching children. I love watching people move, and there are so many things that I pick up just by the way that they are, the way they hold their hands, the kind of like you can just tell that, like, the tone in their fingers, and then you just see their slight posture, and you think, oh, if I could only do this and if I could only do that. It's observation is a remarkable thing. So how our eyes process what we see and how it connects with all of our memory banks and our experience, I think that's quite a remarkable thing. And then with the experience of someone who's had years as a consultant, and recognizing the emotional health and how that affects our body. And I'm obviously concentrating on the sensory aspects of what's going on in the environment to cause someone to look a certain way in that particular environment. Because that's the one thing with sensory needs. It can be totally environmental. It's situational. It's when you're in a specific place that changes how you are because of the sensory environment. Whereas in another place, or if you go outside or you're in the countryside, your body holds itself differently. You perform differently. You might speak differently. You might sing differently. Whatever it is, our bodies react different to sensory experiences. When you're dealing with the other more emotional things, your body is always going to carry it, and you'll pretty much always carry yourself in a certain way until you are healed. And I was always really struck by that. Dis-ease, being disease, and so much of disease being because of that dis-ease in a situation or with what has happened, and not being able to grow past it, or not being able to forgive, not being able to get the right mindsets. And then eventually we get sick or diseased. It's not for every disease, but it did really speak to me at the time when I first heard that. I haven't heard that before. Dis-ease, basically not being at ease.
Yeah.
It's deep, that.
It is deep. There you go. Yeah.
We looked a little bit about somebody who can't look at you in the eye, who won't talk, or, I mean, you would be, I suppose, the obvious terrible generalization would be, oh, they're shy. They don't want to look at me in the eye. They're very confident, and we make all those judgments. Going to the other end of what the sort of two extremes I gave you, not the person that's quiet, but the person that's in your face, Yes, well, yeah, I had this ooze stuff coming out of my arm the other day, and that kind of a conversation, which I've had rarely, thankfully. The people that are just tripping forwards with way too much information, what could be going on with the sensory health stuff where they feel that is the most natural way to be?
Yeah. I do think we have a big cognitive element, which is like that thinking process of understanding what is typical and what is socially acceptable, what is so-called normal. But it could be that we would class those perhaps more as the sensory seekers. So they are needing more input to be able to cope with that environment or to thrive in that environment. And if there's not much else happening elsewhere, well, then the best place to get it is themselves. So they might be moving more, they might be talking more, so that they're feeding their auditory systems. And it can also, they can be sensory seeking because they want more to be able to cope in that environment, or they're doing it to modulate, which means they're actually using it to calm themselves and using either movement or touch or extra chatting and extra all of this, because it just feeds their systems, which actually reduces their arousal levels. So it's not because they are anxious and can't control themselves that way. It's because they are using speech to calm themselves. So it can be used as a strategy rather than just a bleh, because they are anxious or because they've got no stop, which many people do. And that's that cognitive side of it. That's the part of the brain that inhibits, that actually stops things when there is a normal social understanding of things. And they may have a lack of inhibition, as we call it. They may have anxiety, which just makes them trip over themselves and keep talking, or they could be using it to use the auditory system and others to help modulate and calm themselves in an uncomfortable situation.
I mean, nerves is a classic one. It can make you go one of a few ways, one of which would be you start talking very quickly, very incoherently, you saying things you don't think you should be saying, because that discomfort, it's like a disease thing, that starts to really ramp up inside you. And the only way you know to deal with, I guess, the uncomfortableness of the experience, the encounter, the silence, all you know to do is to talk, and then you talk more and faster because you're trying to fill a gap where perhaps silence would have been better. But when we get nervous, we start doing things that perhaps we wouldn't ordinarily do.
Yeah. And that nerves play into sensory processing as well. So if you are more nervous, then you will be more heightened, you will be more receptive to sensory input, which for most times is not helpful, because most people who are more nervous generally, if they're more heightened, if they're more reactive to sensory input, well, then they're going to need to do more behaviors to calm themselves down even more. So that's not a great place to be. We really need to get the right sensory strategies to help calm an overreactive nervous system, or literally someone who is very anxious and nervous. Because if we don't deal with that, then it's really hard to actually help the sensory processing aspect of it. We need to get their system regulated, more regulated, before we can then start feeding it and filling it with good stuff.
People can be quiet when they talk to you. They can be really loud and chatty. I guess depending on our own mood, we're going to be coping better with one or the other. I've spent time with people who are very talkative, and that's great. We go to conferences and festivals, and we've mentioned this before, I'm not going to go down too specific, but all those many conversations tires you out. But I've also been in scenarios where everyone's very much more quiet. And it's difficult in a different way, because then you're trying to tease information out of people, because I like to have conversation, perhaps more than others maybe, but I don't like the silences, not because I don't like silence, but if I'm having a conversation, then I want some two-way movement of words, thoughts, ideas, and what have you. But I think also that, coming back to the risk averse thing that keeps on coming up, we are risk averse of people who we don't like, don't know, don't trust. But if we don't talk to people, we won't possibly know whether we might like to actually get to know them better. whether they've got a shared activity. A few times, Joe says, I just wish there were some women I knew locally who would run with me at my speed. I don't, I go on my own, but I look at the running clubs and, well, they're really good and really fast and really fit, and they all know each other. And I can't run that fast. So there's all these different scenarios. That's just one where who we are and what we are affects then what we go on to do, or perhaps more importantly with sensory health, what we don't then go on to do. Because if we're too scared of, well, I can't speak properly and I've got a funny accent, or my hand's a bit weird because it's kind of fused into a position because of an accident. There's 101 things that can affect our own want to even try to engage with other people. I guess some folk, they chatter a lot because they're just trying to get some connection.
Yeah. And it's interesting that our life group that we host, we have between 20 and 40 people around the house every 2 weeks, and I can tell. Well, it is. We were told it by one person. It's just too much. The actual social. We are close because we've just got like a normal home, and that's a lot of people to be fitting into a home, and we're feeding people as well. We're kind of like sitting down and eating. So it is close quarters. It is loud. It is noisy. Apart from the times when we, quiet and have conversation, but that is not a good fit for everybody. And we're aware of that. So, but it is interesting. The choices that you make and that we should be making, are so profoundly based upon what we are sensing without even realizing that we're actually sensing something. Whether it be like for Joe, somebody going at the same speed, that would be very affirming and just really nice, because their vestibular systems and their proprioceptive systems work in the same way that hers do. But actually, there isn't a good fit there. They're faster and they're probably. Sorry, Joe, if you're faster than the others, but I'm just assuming, thinking I would be similar. I imagine to the way that she is. So it's like, yeah, it's finding a compatibility is nice from a sensory perspective as to how high you want to go, whether you want to go bouldering with people, or whether you'd rather sit and have a board game with people, or whether you want to go to a rock concert with someone, because actually that is, that fits your sensory companionship. There's a new one we're going down. Haven't had that one before. Sensory companionship, and finding those companions that are really a really good fit for you.
I guess one of the other problems we got in society now is that, again, come back to the risk averse, the sort of cohesive family model that holds society together, that's been ripped apart. Yeah, we don't need that. We can get rid of that. We really can't. And society is showing that. But because of society saying we don't need to have the family model, mum, dad, children, it's the best scenario for children to grow up in. And psychiatrists, sociologists will all say the same thing. But because that's been decimated, it's very hard to meet new people that we can trust, because immediately with a family, well, I've got a wife, I've got 3 sons, I know who they are, I know how they function, I know how they tick, I've got other friends and people in our lives, and you grow together. Now, I am not averse to taking a risk with someone I don't know all that well. Others might be, and that's okay. But you set boundaries in order to do that, and it's the same thing with sensory health. If you're not comfortable coming to a house of 40 people, then probably that's not the right place for you to be. There's 2 things. You can say, well, change it to what I want. I want silence and 5 people maximum. Or you can say, well, that's not right for me. Or it might just lead to a simple breakout room, which is quite normal, and say, well, this is a quieter zone. If you're planning, I don't know, some sort of big event in your office, or a conference or whatever, you're going to have louder zones. You're probably going to build in quieter zones, whether it's a conference or a church thing or whatever. You're going to have these different zones. And actually, within a home, you can do the same thing. Well, there's no music in this room. Okay, that's what we're going to have. No music, no smells, no eating. It's just a gentle room. But over here, we're going to have the music, and we're going to have the food and the chat, and we're going to have 30 people in a room that fits 10 because it's good fun. And actually, since you can never actually find anybody like you, which is a very good thing, by the way, that means we get to learn more about who other people are, and bringing the God bit in just for a moment. If you want to see what God looks like, look around you at the people that are around you, because they're all made in his image, which means we're all wonderfully unique and different.
That amazing. Like, I do not know how each of us can be created so different and so unique. It's like, how on earth does that happen? How can, like, yeah, it's one of those, tis a miracle of nature where it's so different, beautifully so.
Did you have this when you had your children? Child one comes along. Okay, fine. This is what a child looks like in my life. Two comes along, and you think, I've got polar opposites. That's interesting. Child three comes along. How have I got three polar opposites? How is that even physically possible? And I've met other people who have the same. I feel like I have three children who are, in one way, polar opposite to each other, and yet absolutely like each other in other ways. It blows my mind.
It is quite remarkable. It's funny from the whole parenting thing. You just think like, because child number one for us, like, was just a dream. And I thought, I really have got this. I was so enjoying parenting, and then really keen for child number two. Child number two is utterly different, completely different. And so all my parenting completely had to change, and then just grew into loving that one, loving the process. I've always loved the children the same, but loving the process of training and working with child number two, growing into that one, because that was new and it was different and it was much harder for me to be able to manage that one. And then you get the third. But yeah, they're remarkable. I just love the differences, and really lovely to see now that they're growing into adulthood, just how they are still connected together, in their differences and the different things that they choose to do and enjoy to do together. It's nice.
We've been talking a little bit about people who you come across who might be very head down, not looking at you in the eyes, not talking to you, and whether that's what are the essentially healthy implications of why that could be. We've also considered the person that's in your face, kinda. They're telling you everything about everything you ever didn't want to know about anybody, but they're telling you anyway because they're very comfortable, perhaps, or not. What's essentially healthy implications of that? And I think it's one of these scenarios again where we need to be really cautious that we're not making a judgment of something that we see or somebody that we see. We don't make that assumption of heads down, oh, they're depressed. Well, not necessarily. Maybe ask the question, but this is the thing you always say: ask the question. Don't just make a judgment. Ask the question: how are you doing today? You don't say, are you feeling depressed? Because where are they going to go? Yes or no? It's a closed question. Closed questions are bad, mostly. Unless you're a police officer, I suppose. But it's asking those open questions that actually encourages conversation. Because here's the thing I love. The church is the best model of the widest family because it's everybody. It's not a 20 to 30 age group. It's not people who like football and not hockey. It's not computer savvy people. It's not people who hate IT. It's literally everybody in this massive melting pot. But when that melting pot comes together, my word, is it good. I've seen it done badly. I'm sure you have as well. But I've also seen it done really well when everybody's a bit more compassionate, and that naturally creates quieter zones and louder zones and funnier zones and little sad zones because someone's just and it's supportive. It's a beautiful community.
It is a remarkable community. And that's when you can understand. It's just like, that's how people will know that I'm alive, that you're my believers, because you will cross ages and experiences and lifestyles and professions and everything, just because you're united in recognizing who you are in Christ, what he's done for you, and the life that you can live as a result and as a response to that. And it is if you look around on a Sunday morning, if that's when you're meeting, it's like it should be, as you say, that wide variety, that beautiful experience of humanity. And especially for us now, we're getting so many more internationals into our Sundays, as people are coming in and flying into Jersey from all over the world. It's that's a lovely thing too.
Sensory health, it is a multifaceted thing. You can't make snap decisions and judgments. You need to have an expert for a start, like you, but we can help other people. But the thing that you have said many times is just ask the question. whether it's somebody who perhaps is struggling to retain information. Are you struggling to remember? Might be a bit direct if we don't know them. But how can we best have a chat today? Would you prefer the sun? I remember going to having a coffee with someone, never met them. They love sitting in the window with the sun. It was an absolute nightmare. I was just sitting there falling asleep, hating every second of it. That's where they wanted to be. They didn't even ask if I might want to do that. So it's good to say to people, are you comfortable here? Are you okay here, or would you prefer somewhere else? All of a sudden, you've got this opening for a conversation just for a cup of coffee. So there's a lot we can do for each other to make the world a better place just by asking a question.
Amen. And it's interesting. We just talked about sunshine because the time of day that we are, that we are live here, the sun is changing. And so I've got the sun on my glasses and I can't see. So I have literally lifted up my glasses for those that are watching me at this moment. And it's just like, I can't see you as clearly, but I feel as though I can connect better because I don't have the glare going on in my glasses. And that's a visual thing. And it's something that would be important for me, but it's a little activity that I can do. And if we weren't talking about this, I wouldn't have brought attention to it. But it's those little things of asking somebody about the sunshine or about the heat or about the light or about, are you okay in this? Does this work for you? Does it not? Same way, I'm meeting someone tomorrow and it's just like, well, her timing and the time that she gets up in the morning is different because of just things that are going on in life. So it's just like, well, just text me. We are going to meet tomorrow, but it's like, when does it suit? And we don't have to decide that now. If that doesn't work, let's both wake up, get in a good place, and then we can connect. And it's those subtleties and those nuances that I really like about communicating well with someone, feeling valued and valuing the other person.
I'm into that. If you want to connect with Laure Jackson, you can go to our website, www.pure247radio.org/ALJ for Laure Jackson. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
The very first edition of our brand new monthly magazine, By Men for Men, hits the streets from the 1st of May. Pure Men's Mag is go. We've pulled together the very best writers we could find, scouring the earth, looking high and low, which means we've done the hard work for you. All you have to do is grab yourself a subscription. We've got digital subscriptions available everywhere via our website, or a 6-month subscription of these high-quality, non-digital, tactile interfacing devices. They don't crash, they don't need updates, the battery's always at 100%. And even better, a brand new one appears every single month. Just head yourself over to www.puremensmag.com and grab yourself a copy. These are by men, for men, and always AI free. Pure Men's Mag is a go.